I'm in my mid-20s. My wife and I, newlyweds, accepted a job I did in Manhattan. Lived about 60 miles north of the city in what is rural New York. Rural community. And one morning, a Saturday morning, I was out in this rural community doing very manual things. Chopping down trees with one swing of my axe. Clearing a pathway from the garage to the house by removing pebbles and leaves. It was autumn. Fighting Indians, wild bears. My wife left very suspiciously that morning, didn't tell me where. But I was out in the backyard again, chopping trees down. She came home and said to me, "Guess where we're going in 7.5 months?" I said, "Where?" She said, "A baby having." And after a pregnant pause, I said, "Wow." She said, "Yes, and you're going to be there." And my husband, Gene, was sleepy. I didn't catch the significance of the personal pronoun you. And I said, "Of course I'm going to be there. I know my role. I'll be in the waiting room." Reading 10-year-old Sports Illustrated, Time magazines, ready with the cigars with other expecting fathers. And she said, "No. You're going to participate." And again, I missed the significance of the personal pronoun you. "We're going to have a natural baby having." I began to think, what prefix could you put on natural? Supernatural? Unnatural? Of course it's going to be a natural baby having. She said, "No, you who participate, you who procreate will now participate. Lamaze classes start soon." And now my husband, Gene, was wide awake, and I figured out this was non-negotiable. We're going to Lamaze class. My wife bought designer pillowcases to take to design class, to the Lamaze class, because our pillowcases were permanently stained with Oreo cookie crumbs and M&Ms. They may not melt in your hand, but they will melt on your pillowcase. Now, Lamaze class begins in your first class with what today we would call an informational. To educate both the wife and the husband is what's going to happen during the pregnancy. And it began that first night with an educational session on the uterus, where the baby, the embryo, is going to grow into your bundle of joy. Now, in thinking about Lamaze class, throughout my life, I heard about what a wonderful, beautiful experience birth is. The miracle of birth. The arrival of a new baby. And no one ever told me what else arrives with that new baby. So I thought witnessing a birth was going to be a peck of fun. Now, in Lamaze, we began talking about the uterus to educate the husband and also the wife what was taking place. Now, I grew up in Buffalo, New York. And as a teenager, I would have given everything I owned, several of my appendages, for accurate information about the uterus. As a teenager now in Buffalo, New York, my wildest fascination was that the love of my life at that point, as a young teenager, love of my life, God had blessed the world with Janet Hamilton. She was the apple of my eye. And my fantasy was, after football practice one day, Janet is waiting along the chain link fence. And she comes up to me and says, Bill, I want to talk to you about my uterus. I mean, my pituitary gland would have released the fireball that would have melted New York.
Okay.
And thinking about that experience, in Lamaze class, after an hour and a half of plastic models, full-color diagrams, lectures, and 2 videos about the uterus, I admit the organ lost much of its charm. If Janet Hamilton would have come up to me and asked me to talk to her about her uterus, I would have jumped off a building. The next thing that we talked about was breathing. Breathing during childbirth. Now, I thought my wife and I, in our mid-20s, were really expert breathers. We've been doing it for like 26, 27 years. But we practiced deep breathing and timing. I had a stopwatch. This is back in the last century, so it wasn't digital. It's the old-fashioned. And I was timing what they call contractions. Contractions. And it's a conspiracy amongst the medical community. These aren't contractions, ladies and gentlemen. These are severe pain spasms. But if they told women that, they never get pregnant in the first place. This is going to hurt. And I can figure that out, and I don't even have a uterus. For example, if I was a woman, even as a woman I could have figured that out. My X and Y chromosomes changed over, and I was born a woman. Call me Wilhelmina instead of William. I grow up in my late 20s. My neighbors asked me to babysit their newborn. And I go over to their home, and they hand me this bundle of joy to watch while they go to a neighborhood gathering. And I say to the baby, "Oh, what a beautiful baby. One day, I'm going to have a baby like you. If you will grow up in my uterus, come out into the world and grow up and be president." Yes, you will grow in my uterus, and how will you get out of my uterus? I don't think so. And Albert, my boyfriend asked me, "Well, Wilhelmina, when are we going to get married and have a family?" Family? Albert, we've only been dating 12 years. Why rush this? Well, the day arrives, and I don't want to name names, but I kept up my part of the bargain. I was there in the delivery room encouraging my wife to breathe. "Come on, honey, breathe." Have my stopwatch out. Have it prepared. And she gets into a snit about my stopwatch. She doesn't want the stopwatch. She doesn't want anything. And the contractions are coming closer and closer together. We're about to have the birthing experience. And my wife screams to me in Russian. Translate. You will never touch me again. And out came our bundle of joy. The doctor cuts the umbilical cord and hands me our bundle of joy. I was terrified. Purple, covered in gunk. And the head looked like the Oscar-nominated winner. We've got a deformed